Michael Saylor is at it again. Michael Saylor is selling parts of his company. He's selling stock of Microstrategy, very likely again in order to buy Bitcoin with it. Now, when I did the research for this video, I was pretty surprised. I was surprised to see Microstrategy's performance relative to the rest of the stock market, but also relative to Bitcoin. There are these jokes around the internet that mock Michael Saylor. For example, this one: McDonald's is digital gold, never sell your Big Mac, hodl. Some people even compare Michael Saylor with Jim Cramer. Whenever Michael Saylor is buying, that might be a potential top signal, because historically he didn't buy at perfect times. And so I was especially surprised in comparing Microstrategy's performance relative to the Nasdaq and relative to Bitcoin. Now, this is Microstrategy's price before any Bitcoin had ever been purchased. It didn't do much, it simply just went sideways. But then came the Bitcoin awakening and Microstrategy went up quite a bit. To be more specific, it went up by roughly 230%. Now, in case you're a subscriber of this channel, you know that I like to look at relative performance. So for example, when buying an altcoin, I look at the altcoin's price development relative to Bitcoin. I don't look at the US dollar chart. And that's because I want to see outperformance over Bitcoin. An altcoin is always more risky than just Bitcoin. And so when the outperformance isn't there, then why take on more risk? The same concept can be applied for stocks. So one could say, if I buy a certain individual stock, I want it to outperform the benchmark, so either the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq, depending on what stock I buy. Now, Microstrategy is a special case because here we can do two comparisons. We could either compare it to the stock market, so for example to the Nasdaq 100, or we could compare it to Bitcoin. Let's do both of those things now. This is Microstrategy stock divided by the Nasdaq 100 or by the QQQ Nasdaq 100 ETF. And that performance is before any Bitcoin had ever been purchased. So Microstrategy really had a pretty bad time. Within 10 years or so, it went down versus the Nasdaq by 80%. But then look at what happened once Bitcoin got purchased. This is again relative performance. Microstrategy outperformed the rest of technology by 139%. So really, the decision to buy Bitcoin was a very positive thing for Michael Saylor. Of course, he took on more risk, right? There's more volatility on the balance sheet now, but overall, so far in those last 3 years, things played out very well for him. But let's say you are now considering to either buy pure Bitcoin or to buy Microstrategy stock. What would have been better in the last 3 years? Here's Microstrategy stock relative to Bitcoin. And it is pretty much just oscillating. Sometimes Microstrategy is very expensive, sometimes it's very cheap relative to Bitcoin. Now it tends to be rather on the somewhat more expensive side. So one could consider to even trade this, right? To sometimes own more Microstrategy or to own more Bitcoin. So now you would be rather balancing towards Bitcoin and sell some Microstrategy stock. Now, it's hard to say if this kind of trading range will stay, because if an ETF gets approved, a Bitcoin spot ETF, then maybe some of that Microstrategy money goes into the ETF. Because really, people aren't that interested in the Microstrategy business. People simply just want Bitcoin exposure. But if you can get Bitcoin exposure more directly, then why own Microstrategy? So of course, no financial advice, especially with stocks. But if I had to currently make a bet, what is likely going to outperform Bitcoin or Microstrategy in the next year or two, I'd bet on Bitcoin. Nothing against Michael Saylor. He's a great force for all of Bitcoin. And he has already done pretty well for himself betting so much on Bitcoin. But as an investor that can allocate to any asset class that doesn't have any restraints, I currently rather own the Bitcoin itself than to get into Microstrategy. There's simply too many risks. Please give this a like and consider subscribing. And if you've got Telegram, feel free to join us. Simply search for Bitcoin Strategy channel within the Telegram app or click the link down below. Looking forward to chatting with you. Bye-bye.